Alrighty, folks. Yes, sirree. Let me see here. It's 11 minutes and 15 seconds after the hour, which means that we are 11 minutes and 15 seconds late. Well, sorta, because we started precisely at 9 o'clock like we were supposed to. However, for whatever reason, we were not getting up to Facebook this morning as we continue to be plagued by boogaboo after boogaboo after boogaboo. Pilgrims, thank you very much for hanging in there. And let's get down to brass tacks because we've got some nice stuff going on here this morning. It's a very simple presentation this morning. However, I see that some of you have at least remained. Facebook is starting to become a little bit active. This morning, we're going to bring you an excerpt from last night's program, Make We Chat. For those of you who have not been watching that program, let me tell you, snap out of it and start making a conscious effort. Because last night we had one heck of a program. And one of the things we dealt with on that program was the situation with the LIAT and Grenada now becoming a shareholder, plus a number of other things. We're not going to be able to run you the entire piece this morning. However, we are going to run you an excerpt from that program, which I think will raise your eyebrows. Yeah. So yes, we got that coming your way in just a wee bit. We also have the national report for you. And in addition to that, Mr. Brian Pitt will be joining us electronically via Zoom. If I'm not mistaken, he's already watching us out there this morning. And that's going to be interesting as well. Let's wait and see what he throws at you this morning. Curveball, maybe. So, let's get down to brass tacks. I think the whole world knows by now that LIAT now has a new shareholder in the government of Grenada. Well, a lot of questions to be asked about that, how that happened. And you'll hear what our panelists had to say last night. We had Jerry in St. Vincent, Margaret was in New York, Athy was in Dominica. Gentleman from St. Kitts also joined us last night, and by the way, he's an attorney. His name is Dwyer Estefan. And who else did we have last night? Who else did we have there last night? Beverly in Grenada, and myself. So right now, I'd like you to, before I say good morning to the folks out there on Facebook, I want you to take a listen to the excerpt that you're about to hear. And again, it raises the question, how is this airline being managed? You know, despite all the calls for improvement or enhancement in the management of LIAT, when you sit back and look at the way things are going, you have to ask yourself the question, what are these people thinking? Take a look.
And talking about business, we're going to look at the business of LIAT. You know, the government of one of the elected officials in Grenada who sits in the cabinet, Minister of CARICOM Affairs, Oliver Joseph, announced in a news conference, in the post-cabinet conference this week, that Grenada has become the latest shareholder in LIAT. And I said to myself, here come elected officials again, taking people for idiots. A few weeks ago, when the Prime Minister of Trinidad said that LIAT had something like 10 days to live if it didn't get 5.4 million US dollars, the only non-shareholding, shareholding in quotations, because Grenada has been a shareholder of LIAT for a long, long time, albeit a tiny shareholder, right? So the only non-shareholding country to come forward and say we'll help is Grenada. The Minister of Finance, who is the Prime Minister of Grenada, announced that they handed over $1 million to LIAT. Then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, the Minister of CARICOM Affairs comes and says, oh, we gave them $1.3 million and Grenada is now a shareholder in LIAT. And I'm like, so how do you become a shareholder in LIAT? Who sold shares, right? Because according to what you can find, even when you go on LIAT website, LIAT don't tell you the distribution of shares. But according to information that you can find, Barbados, Antigua, Barbuda, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Dominica own 94.7% of LIAT, right? And the other 5.3% is owned by Grenada, Guyana, Jamaica, St. Kitts, Nevis, Montserrat, St. Lucia, Trinidad, Tobago, Antigua Commercial Bank, Antigua Barbuda Investment Bank, ACB Investment Company Limited, Antigua Barbuda Workers Union, BW West Indies Airways Limited, Caribbean Airways, HKH Antigua Limited, Leeward Islands Aeronautical Engineers Association, LIAT Staff Provident Fund, National Commercial Bank of Dominica, National Commercial Bank of Grenada. I think both of these are now Republic banks. Jones Slack, State Insurance Company, St. John's Cooperative Credit Union. Those are the other people listed that own 5.3% shares. So whose shares Grenada buy?
But hold on. Something that is missing. There's this company in Saudi Arabia, one of them, who bought the 7 airlines, the aircrafts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And who
Right.
leased them back. And they have, I was told they had, I think it was 17%. So I don't understand how this share thing go. Because when they were
No,
asked
I don't
the other day,
understand how LIAT share things go.
that's what I'm talking about. It's LIAT I'm talking about. Because I'm telling you, when they were making the decisions in the first meeting on March 11th, these people were mentioned that they had discussions with them about taking a cut, just like how they were having this. They used that with the staff to say, listen, these people don't belong to us, and we spoke to them, and they're taking a cut, and this is your business, and you don't want to take a cut. That is one of the things they use. So they too they too are shareholders. I don't get it, because this has to be a share that is bigger than 100%.
It has to be more than 100%.
Has to be more than 100%.
Grenada.
Don't look so startled, Margaret. Not me.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah. Grenada is among.
I'm just trying to figure this out.
Yeah. This is one of those cases of half and bigger half.
Grenada is among that small block which owns the 5.3% of LIAT. The other 4 countries own 94%. So who sold shares to Grenada? How many shares did Grenada get for the 1.3 million, which the minister said, oh, it's not a million, we did give them is 1.3. And how can you use the same money, which you say you're giving for emergency funding, but all of a sudden now is that same money you use to buy the shares? Is who these people taking for idiots?
No, because they have done it for years, but this time we calling them out. Because there's a distinction between a shareholder and a stakeholder. All right? And somebody needs to tell them we ain't all this dumb anymore.
Exactly.
Because Antigua was talking about buying over the majority shares from Barbados.
From Barbados.
We still ain't
Well,
hear nothing
that's what I
about
was
it.
going to ask, because I thought I heard something about Barbados wanting to sell their shares or selling their shares or something.
Well, I'm not so sure the
wondering.
Barbados say they want to sell their shares. Antigua say they will buy it.
Okay, because then I was wondering if that was where Grenada got shares, if they bought shares from
No, Barbados don't sell no shares. Nobody
Barbados has
sold them
49.1 shares.
Okay.
Well, no, for 1%. However much shares, because we don't know. We don't know what
94%, because we really don't know what percentage each island holds. But we know
Exactly.
that 4 together control 94.7%, and everybody else control 5.3%. So where did Grenada get shares?
And so if my
shares?
if my tax dollar as a citizen is contributing to LIAT, why I don't know what percentage of the shares that each...
Let me tell you something, Margaret. I found out recently from another country that when their prime minister even asks for the financials, they don't get it. But they're going to the same country to ask them to bail them out. So this whole question, and that is why I understand when Prime Minister Gonzalez say that going to the private sector is a no-no. Because if you go to the private sector, you have to release all the... You see, all that talk about Branson is talk.
But
There is
everybody
nowhere
know
they're
that.
going to sit down and without putting those financials on the table. It ain't going to happen.
But that's the only thing Richard Branson gonna talk about. The figures.
Yes.
Because if you're gonna invest in an entity, you have to know where it is
You
and you
have
have to know
to
where
know
you're going.
what they're putting money in. But I was
Exactly.
told they can't, not even the prime ministers were able to get the information on the financial. They refused to
So
give them.
who holds this board accountable?
Obviously, some small group holds it. And then they come to us every time and tell us that they need more money. But we never know where the money that we gave them last time went to. And we never know really and truly. I could tell you this much. There's a $60 million US loan.
Somebody has
Sorry,
the
debt.
radio playing.
There's a feedback coming back.
Yeah, there's a $60 million loan that LIAT has. I could tell you that. And LIAT has found itself in further trouble because remember that case in the US Virgin Islands? That's eaten into their US reserves because it's not like in one of these islands where they would not have bothered with it. They have to pay that. They have to.
And
it's US dollars.
Gaston Brown said a former employee who sued them, should have looked at the books and looked at LIAT's state of affairs before he filed the lawsuit.
Worse, he said the lawyers and the court should have looked at the state of LIAT
before handing down the judgment, How can you tell LIAT to pay all this money and LIAT don't have money? But Prime Minister Brown says a lot of things. He's the top dog in Antigua. He barks a lot. Yeah.
But the one thing I want to say before we run out is that I have seen, and I mentioned it this morning, that a senior economist from the Caribbean Development Bank has reiterated the stance of the CDB. 3 years ago, the CDB did a study and prepared a report, and in the report were recommendations. The Prime Minister talks about the recommendation where they say, 1, fold it up, 2, give it to private sector, 3, restructure it. They quote that all the time. But one of the biggest things that came out of that report was the fact that the CDB says the government taxes are literally stifling travel in the region. You don't hear them mention it. In fact, in that same interview that was so touted last week with Prime Minister Gonzalez talking about the closure imminent, Prime Minister Gonzalez came to blows with Chester Humphrey on that issue. Because when asked about it, he is saying, we can't do anything about that because how else would we pay for the airports? And I remember give Chester his...
Hold a second, Jerry. Argyle International Airport in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, that is the highest tax on any ticket,
Yeah, no. And if they get them a chance, they'll raise it again.
You see? So...
Yeah, isn't it? And the other thing is, too, if you happen to be on a LIAT flight, if you're unfortunate to get one of these flights that does what the milk run, for example, where it stops pretty much everywhere going, then you pay taxes on every single airport that you touch down in.
And the point I was going to make is that Chester Humphrey made an excellent point. Because when the Prime Minister said, how do we expect we're going to maintain all these big airports? First thing, who sent us to have every country have an international airport? That's one. But he made a point. He says, look at New York. 14 million people. There are 2 major airports in New York. Right?
That's a very good point for Senator Humphrey to be making now. But when Dr. Gonzalez was building the airport, Senator Humphrey was one of the loudest voices of praise.
Well, you know how they are. That's what we can't understand with these people.
The limited vision, because at the time when the airport was being built, Chester Humphrey, who was leading the workers' union at that time, he didn't realize that it's going to become a strain. He didn't realize.
No, my dear, it is about who they support. It's about the support for who. It's a personality.
And a matter of convenience.
Yes, it's about the personality. If I'm supporting this person, whatever this person does, I'm supporting it because for some reason this person is God.
But is the same personality. So why is it now that he's pointing out to him the folly of building another airport?
Can I say something? Can I
Certainly.
say
Sure.
something? Now, I've heard this argument about airport taxes and charges. I grew up in a shop. My father had a shop. We used to sell red beans and pig snout and pigtail and saltfish and so, right? So I learned my first degree I didn't get in school. I got my first degree in my father's shop. It was a BSc behind the shop counter. That was my first degree. And I understand that if you lower the airport charges, Jerry and Beverly and Margaret and Affy and everybody else, if you lower the airport charges, you create the opportunity and the tendency and the likelihood for more traffic to come through your airport. So even though you're making less per unit passenger, you're grossing up to higher numbers
On the volume.
and the volume. So they must not punish the passengers and they must not punish LIAT with these high taxes. The very governments and leaders who are calling for people to bail out LIAT are the ones whose countries impose the highest taxes on the
Exactly.
tickets.
Thank you.
It is damn hypocritical, excuse my
Thank you.
language. It is
It's not
hypocritical.
language.
It is.
And that to me is one of the major problems with LIAT. A second major problem with LIAT is the fact that it is overemployed, particularly in Antigua. And to ask governments from other countries to subsidize bad governance in Antigua because the government there cannot find alternative jobs for the people in the private sector is not amusing to me. And the third problem is the lack of transparency. Here we are speculating as to where the shares come from that Grenada says they bought. We shouldn't be speculating on these things. The whole region should know what the LIAT accounts look like, the relative shareholdings, and all of this business. I don't like this opaque governance thing, and it must end. And if I were leading a government, while I'm a big LIAT supporter and I understand the critical importance of LIAT, I would not pump a penny into LIAT until I saw the books.
And that is the stance
And
of President Chastity.
And until I got the governments to agree to lower their rates and for them to allow LIAT to run itself like a business rather than all of this political spitting in their mouths.
All right, Pilgrims, once again, that was an excerpt from last night's edition of Mech We Chat. You know, one of the things I couldn't help but notice as I sat here watching that piece, did you notice RT at the bottom right of that frame? He was like listening to the word about LIAT. He was just holding on to his head, and then he gave us one of these. Did you notice that? Well, the entire segment is up on the GrenadaBroadcast.com website. You can go check that out. You guys also posted a few comments here. T.F. Richards says, George, the whole business of LIAT and other wrongdoings of the government is not important. It is not a tool used to win an election, sad to say. It's the minority of the populace that discuss and vote on issues. TF has a point there. By the way, TF, we have a bone to pick with you in a little while. Dennis Charles says, Dennis, good to see you. Dennis says, Grenada needs prayers. I shall say no more. Dennis, I hope you will initiate and lead that prayer group. Yes, sir. Donna Joseph says, Grenada buy out the whole 5.3% that belong to all the names that Miss Sinclair called out. Maybe. Hey, Brian, are you hearing me now? Yeah, Brian seems to be hearing us now. Okay. So, Let's see. Also with us this morning, John's there, Donna, Chester, Anthea, Sharon, Martin, Carmichael. Yeah, the whole kit and caboodle. They're there this morning. Let me explain to you what happened a little while ago. This morning, I logged on to Facebook a little earlier than I normally do, not knowing that if you log on for apparently more than a certain period of time and do not go on the air live, they cut you off. They blank you. And that's what happened this morning. Because I logged on a little bit earlier this morning, when we were actually ready to go online, they said, sorry, sir. So we had to start the process all over again. That's why we were a couple of minutes late getting started. Let me take a little break here and we'll come on back with the national report.
Are you equipped to take a closer look behind the numbers? The Caribbean Institute of Forensic Accounting can help you build your professional skills to audit and investigate fraud, waste, and abuse. Through the Forensic Certified Public Accountants FCPA program, you gain qualification to conduct forensic audits and investigations globally. Earn international recognition and designation as a Forensic Certified Public Accountant from the Forensic CPA Society of the USA. Certificate courses run May to November 2019 in Grenada at the Grenada National Stadium. To register, contact us at info@cfa-edu.com or 868-224-3478.
I'm always on the move. Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Co-op Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try the sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Alrighty, folks. We're going to turn things around a little bit this morning. First of all, John here is saying, George, 500 lines. I will not log on too early in the future. John, yes, sirree. I apologize for that. Now, pilgrims, at this point, we would normally be bringing you the national report. However, take a look. See that gentleman up there? He's been sitting there for quite a few minutes, looking pretty. And I think it would be unfair to keep him waiting any longer. So without further ado, I'm going to say good morning to Mr. Brian Pitt and his blue headphones. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, George, and good morning to your listeners and viewers. I keep forgetting that you have listeners and viewers. From time to time, I believe the conversation is just between you and I. But good morning to the rest of the world who log into your website.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Can I ask you a question, George?
Yes, sir.
Does GIS give you equal time for programming on GIS?
No, sir.
You know, George, those people who are proficient at propaganda get other people to propagandize what they have to say, and they don't provide equal time. You carry this national report from GIS, which I consider most times propaganda. But they don't give you any time. That is not fair.
You know, Mr. Pitt, it's interesting that you should. It's interesting that you should bring that up, and I'm glad that you did, because as you know, I'm labeled by the government of this nation as being very anti-government. Yet, I make sure that in all my programs I give these people fair time.
But George, later on this morning, I want to address that because, you know, I have been searching my mind to find how are we going to find a way to check and balance the governance of this country. And I am still searching my mind, but I'm going to get to that in a minute. I want to open this morning with an idea that came across my mind now that we are preparing for Carnival. You know, there's a lot of Carnival talk. We launched Carnival last weekend. And we're celebrating the jump and wine. We're celebrating the fact that Mr. Killer was the international soca monarch in Trinidad and Tobago. We're celebrating that Bourne and Mr. Legs did very well, and the other guys, they all did very well. What I'm not hearing, though, is a policy decision by the government of Grenada to speak to the performing arts. Whether or not we will give people scholarships, whether or not we will allow these young men who are pursuing a career in music duty-free concessions on all equipment coming in for that purpose. You know, this is not reinventing the wheel. George, let me tell you a brief story. Jamaica and reggae. Reggae is now an international form of celebrated music. As a matter of fact, it is on the Grammys list where soca is trying to get. And many moons ago, I think it was Michael Manley recognized the importance of reggae to the national economy and put a policy in place to allow people who are participating or want to advance their career in reggae duty-free concessions on all equipment. At one point there, George, in Jamaica, there was a recording studio in almost every house because people were given the initiative to go there and do something. Reggae is now on the world stage, but we are jumping and whining and not coming up with a policy. Maybe that policy could be in the name of Mr. Killer. George, I rest my case on that.
Yeah. Okay, Brian.
George,
You know, there's not much left for me to say. Go ahead.
I know, and it's a pity that we don't have people guiding us in the right direction in a lot of these issues. George, I was listening to that LIAT debate, and for some time now, I've been trying to find answers to who is going to provide checks and balances for the governance of this country. Who is going to make sure that there is transparent and disclosure on issues related to government action or inaction? You know, Ray Roberts had an ongoing battle with Grenada Broadcasting Network, GBN, about this young lady who is hosting their
Beyond the Headlines
program. And the lady's a lawyer, so I mean, she should be able to ask questions to get to the bottom of issues. The question is whether she will ask the questions that will get people to be transparent and open. So it has nothing to do with who she is. It has to do with what she is and whether or not she will dare to ask the questions that should be asked. And I think that is where the discussion comes in. And in my search, George, to find an answer, it took me to our Constitution. It took me to our Constitution and Chapter 8, I think it is, which speaks to judicial provision. And maybe the judiciary will be the answer for some of these questions. But how do we get there? And George, I go back to, you know, governments seem to want to control everything. I go back to post-Ivan again, George. Post-Ivan, there was one building that looked after the parliament and the courts, and for some reason we refused to build back a court. We are in a discussion now about where we will have a court, and it behoves me that we are still having this dialogue and not having open discussion. But why didn't we not build a court? Is it that the executive and the parliamentary people who are now with one decide that they don't want to have that check? You see where I'm going with this, George? We are trying very hard to erode all the checks and balances that allow for transparent and open governance.
Well, you know, Brian, I don't think you're the only person sharing that view. I've heard a number of people express concern that there's some, or might be some, ulterior motive to leaving our court system in the state that it is.
I don't think it's a might anymore. I think, I mean, I don't want to say it's a conspiracy theory. I don't want to say it's a whatever, but it's evident that people are trying very hard not to disclose or be transparent about most issues in regard to governance. And I'm going through the list of people that can provide this, George. I'm looking at the journalists, I look at the radio stations. It is almost, most of us right now are self-censored. And let's note, George, that radio stations are the key to people getting information in Grenada. But Grenada Broadcast does not have a channel that people can listen to on the radio.
They did
And
everything
your
to make
station, George, might be the only station where there might be a view that challenges the transparency of government.
That's why they had to get rid of it.
And I don't know how we're going to get over this hump, you know, George. But we have to find a way, because it could lead to destruction.
Yeah. But then again, it happens because, you know, those who are in a position to do something about it didn't. When this station was shut down the first time, which was about 3 or 4 months after we first went on the air, would you believe that the Media Workers Association of this country remained absolutely mute, never said a word? One of them happened to be, if I'm not mistaken, a representative for an organization called Reporters Without Borders. Nada, nothing. So, I mean, you know, it's one thing to do these crazy things and get away with it, but they get away with it because we allow them to. So, and we have to take some of the blame.
But George, and it brings me to this very important point, and I'm hesitating to raise it, but I'm going to raise it. We have moved from an economy that is supported by multilateral arrangements. In other words, you have the European Union providing funds in Grenada to do certain things, and you have different groupings, to a place of unilateralism, bilateralism, so that we now have an arrangement, for example, with the Chinese. And let me raise the Chinese because it's a topical issue, where the Chinese really don't care about governance yet. They care about what they can get from the support of Grenada. So they have this Silk Road project, for example. And I think we should be wary of spiders and silk, huh? Because spiders are the ones who give us silk, but they could be deadly. You know, George? And most of these bilateral arrangements really don't care about governance. As a matter of fact, they might be more interested in keeping the government in power that facilitates their arrangement. Yes, George? Mm-hmm. And a lot of us now, because our economies are on the ground, they're dragging, because we don't have those key things like agriculture, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, because I hear the IMF is now talking about that we are totally dependent on grants and handouts. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. Comment.
Yeah.
And you know, even though the Silk Road of China has been blamed for economies in Africa going very bad, because they're not giving total grant, they may give you a loan, even though it's at 0%, it's a loan and you have to pay it back. And a lot of these countries are now in a bind, because they can't pay back some of these things. So a lot of us are going by the way of bilateral arrangements. Let's take Venezuela. We went into a bilateral arrangement with Venezuela to petrocarry. And now we find ourselves in a position now where what are we going to do? Say we're not supporting Maduro? You know, I don't know what's going on in Venezuela. I have my own theories about that. But bilateral arrangements can get us into trouble. But we don't care about that trouble because we want to stay in power. And that is unfortunate, and I don't know how we can get out of this malaise, George. And I'm going to continue to look through the Constitution and see where we can find hope, George.
Margaret says here, Brian, that is exactly why they pursue bilateral arrangements.
Yes, and unfortunately, we need a loud and vibrant opposition. At one point in time, the NDC was going around this country having little corner meetings and communicating to the people of this country. I don't think they're doing that anymore. And if they are waiting on the radio stations in Grenada to broadcast anything that they put out, they're sadly mistaken. The only way to get the word out to people is to go and meet the people. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, George, and I'm worried. I'm worried very much that the way we're going. Let me tell you, for example, I heard the IMF report representative in Grenada recently talking about a number of issues. And all of a sudden, I am hearing that we should pay attention and put focus on agriculture. Mm-hmm. I'm saying, but where the hell was the IMF a couple of years ago? And not only that, George, they're no longer talking about unemployment. They're talking about sustainable employment. For those who have any sense of economics, sustainable employment is what you talk about, period. Not building concrete and everybody being a gardener and a bartender. Sustainable employment. All of a sudden, the IMF, they have us where they want us, and they're talking about agriculture and sustainable employment. George, we're in a deep hole, and I really don't have the answer. But I'm going to keep reading the Constitution. I might find help there.
And share with us.
And I will share it with you. But I think we all should go back to that document, George, and see what we can find, because we're going down a road where transparency is not what governments do. Guyana, George, found oil. And it is alleged that Guyana could become the richest country in the Western Hemisphere, island state, because of the quantum of oil that they have found, oil and gas. And already there's conversation about monies that have not been accounted for. In a BBC report recently, there was a figure of some few $1 million that was paid 2 years ago and is now appearing in the public coffers. So how do we get governments to be accountable and transparent about those issues they represent us on? And we are having that conversation on how does the person that we give a contract to discover oil and gas in our waters run out of money and not lose the contract? George, I really don't know where we're going to go, where we're going with this thing.
Well, Brian, these folks out there are listening, so perhaps, and to some extent, we are already going. Let me share some of the thoughts being expressed here. Donna Joseph says, Brian, we are already down that road where transparency is a bad word. So says Donna. Peter Bishop says, Brian has his hands on the pulse. I am sorry for my country. Margaret said a little while ago, I don't know that a political party in Grenada can lead the change. That will have to come from the ground up. And, when she says stuff like that, I imagine that she's referring to people like you and me who have the intestinal fortitude to speak out. For starters, T.F. Richards says, Mr. Pitt, have you seen or visualized the name of the China agreement? And I quote here, the Belt Road, unquote. They go cut we ass and run us after.
George, this is not funny, what I'm about to say. But this has surfaced recently. There was an ad in the Chinese media for a particular soap product. You start to laugh, George?
I saw it.
You know what's amazing about this, George? Is that the ad apparently was running in China for a few months. And let me explain to those who have not seen the ad what the ad is. It is about a soap product, and a black guy walks into the room where the Chinese lady, doing her laundry. And he is making a romantic approach to the lady. And what she does, she takes the guy and she pushes him in the washing machine with this detergent, and he pops out looking like a Chinese man. And not until this ad hit the Western press or the whatever, did China apologize for the ad. Now, I don't want to blame a whole country by the dealings of one company who might be trying to sell soap, George. But if that ad ran in China for a few months before they took it off, it tells me something.
Mm-hmm. Speaks volumes.
Mm-hmm. So these bilateral arrangements, I don't know whether they're helping us or hurting us.
Well, Donna here says exactly, Brian. Bilateral arrangements can be very serious consequences.
Yes, especially when you have a minister of government saying, "Don't bite the hand that feeds you." Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? And where is the head of this person who makes a comment like that? Mm-hmm. That's a person that is representing us, George.
And there are a lot more like her. Yeah.
I'm lost for words this morning, George, because I get very emotional when I speak about these things, because there isn't an answer around the corner. And even though Chapter 8 under the judicial provision gives us some hope, and even though we recognize that lawyers are judges, so a lawyer with an opinion today could change if he becomes a judge. That is a chance that we have to take. But beyond that, I don't know where we're going.
Mm-hmm. You're not alone, Brian. You're not alone.
Sorry for the sad note.
Yeah, well, I think that's what has everybody in this country so frustrated. Well, not everybody. Obviously, there are people doing quite well. But there are a lot of people who are absolutely just totally frustrated. Anthony DeRiggs here says, the people who live in many rich oil countries catching the nin because of the crooks who are called leaders. Margaret says, oil for all its potential riches comes with a curse.
Yes, it comes with a curse, but it also comes with some advantage, George? In that report I was talking about out of the BBC, they did talk about the amount of jobs that have already been created by Exxon in Guyana, and the amount of schools that now have programs training people to work in the industry. I'm listening to this guy from the IMF yesterday, and I'm saying to him, I wonder if he will understand what's going on in this region. He's talking about IT training. He is not talking about maybe Grenada should start training some people to get jobs in the oil and gas industry, because it already started in Guyana. And if we find anything in our waters, then we need trained people. Yeah? So maybe we can train some people, let them go to Guyana to work, and by the time we are ready, they could be ready to give us, to be productive in our market. Yeah, George? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I listened to this guy yesterday, and I'm saying to myself, well, where is he coming from? But of course, people will equate my thoughts against somebody who works for the IMF. And let me tell you something. The more we get into these bilateral arrangements, the less important are people like the IMF and the World Bank.
Mm-hmm. But you see, one of the big problems we face is that we here in these developing countries look up to people like the World Bank and the IMF. You know, the IMF and the World Bank, they come into countries like this, and I mean, when they come here, we are to listen because they are the IMF and we are the World Bank, and they speak, and that is it.
Yeah.
Therein lies the problem. I mean, we don't have the intestinal guts to really pose our questions, share our thoughts with these people. We're still very subservient. You know, you talk about colonialism and whatever. Anyhow,
so what is the World Bank? What is the World Bank? Just quickly, what are they going to do to help us to recover agriculture? What is he proposing? You know, and I didn't hear anything about that. Maybe it's in a document somewhere. I look forward to seeing that document. Sorry, George, go ahead.
Margaret says, also look at what China is doing to the Uyghurs. That should tell all something. Yeah. TF Rich, TF's taking off this morning. TF says the head of that person is in St. Mark's. You know, we were talking a little while ago about the hands that feed us. And he says, hence the reason nothing is happening in St. Mark's. Okay. Brian, my friend.
One last point before I leave.
Yeah?
You must have noticed, let me call, I don't know what they are, maybe called telephone lines. Lines being run all across Grenada.
Yes.
By some people that don't look like Grenadians.
Yes, yes.
I understand they're from Guatemala.
Yes.
And, you know, I wonder to myself, these are people climbing poles and running lines. Couldn't there be some arrangement? And by the way, I called the Ministry of Labor on this issue, but they couldn't give me the answers because for whatever reason. That to one person from Guatemala, there could be one person from Grenada working on this contract. And I have not heard, maybe I missed it, any trade union representing laborers, bring this issue to the front, you know, George. Have you?
No.
So again, this idea of transparent governance, are we to assume that some unions are also involved in this process so that they cannot be transparent?
Yeah.
You know, it's a pity, George.
It's a pity, and it gives credence to the concerns being expressed out there that we have lost confidence in our government to governors. We have lost confidence in our churches. We have lost confidence in our police. We have lost confidence in the trade unions. Who's left, Brian? We've lost confidence in the media. Who else is left, Brian? Answer that before you go.
Maybe there's a young guy, a young lady out there who is paying careful attention to what our generation is planning to leave them and will ascend to leadership that will address that particular question because they have all good reason to provide leadership for their generation.
Brian, maybe there's credence to what you're saying, but only last night I heard Beverly Sinclair on McWe Chat repeating something I've heard this woman say umpteen times about political parties. Do we need political parties? Political parties have us where we are today, Brian. And it's not just here in Grenada. If you listen to McWe Chat, you'll find out this crap's going on all over the Caribbean. Brian, all over the world. Okay? So the thing is, in the absence of political parties, what do you have, Mr. Pitt?
Are you going to blame political parties, George, or are you going to blame the politicians who get into political parties to make a living? You see, at one point, politics was about service, you know.
Yes.
And public servants was about service, and teachers was about teaching. So when a teacher goes in the classroom, they took responsibility for that child. When a guy goes to work in the public service, he works there according to the rules of the public service. Until politicians started to move them around because they wanted to stay in power, because politics became a living. They had to send their children to school, they had to pay their mortgage, etc., etc. The question, I think, is when is politics going to going to revert to being something about service? And it speaks to what should be the criteria to run for public office. And I don't know if we will get there anytime soon, because the politicians control the electoral process. These guys have a way of getting into everything under the guise of democracy. Yeah? So they will say, if they set up some integrity body, and that integrity body has 8 people on it, and they appoint 5. That is a democratic process that their wishes come forth, because they have 5 votes, and that is democracy. They have abused this thing called democracy, and we've allowed them to do it.
But Brian, I don't know if you heard it, but I have heard that democracy is under fire right now.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Thank you, Mr. Pitt.
You're very welcome,
Thank
George.
You,
enjoy the weekend. Sorry to have this. You have your head down. I don't like that.
George. No, Brian. Listen, I enjoy what I do. I really love doing this. Not just this program, all the programs that I do. But Brian, when you sit in this chair and have to listen to this day in, day out,
But George, maybe some company in the private sector will have a conscience and say, George Grant, you have an interesting program. Let me see if I can assist you to get back on the airwaves, so that the rest of the people in Grenada who can turn on the radio in the morning, because a lot of us is the radio, can get to hear some of your programs. And I hope there's somebody in the private sector out there with a conscience that will allow that to happen.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because first of all, I want to acknowledge the fact that there are a handful, actually not even a full handful, but there's some people out there. You talk about the Hubbards, the Grenlecks, Co-op Bank. These are people who are making it possible for you to sit here and chat with me this morning, okay? But Brian, there are so many others who would not spend a dime anywhere the name George Grant is mentioned, because they've been told he's an NP man. Sorry, excuse me, he's an NDC man. Stay away from George.
Just a quick note again, George. There have been business people in this country who have written checks to both political parties.
Yeah.
So you don't have to just so you don't advertise on George Grant, but send him some money. You advertise on the other radio stations in Grenada. Nobody has to know what you do, but your conscience will tell you to get the word out, so that there could be transparent governance in Grenada.
And something really good happened yesterday that I want to acknowledge. Yesterday morning, we had some issues with the program, and I was talking about the fact that everybody out there keeps demanding more from the program. But even though since October last year we had a donate button put up on the website asking for help, hardly any assistance came. But yesterday, I was sitting here and explaining to the people that it's one thing to complain when there's no audio or the video is not good and this and that, but folks, broadcasting is expensive business, and to do it well, you need to have the resources. Brian, by the end of the day yesterday, I had two people, I'm not going to call their names, make donations. Brian, and these people, they weren't able to give me thousands of dollars, but the little penny halfpenny that they had, Brian, they helped. They helped. And these are the people I so appreciate for help.
Before the end of the year, George, the rest of the people in Grenada will turn their radios on and be able to hear you.
Are you prophesying here, Mr. Pitt? You turned pastor now?
I am hoping, John. Have a good weekend, my man. Have a good weekend. Are you going to Bonjour on Saturday?
No. You know, no. I'm not going to bourgeois banter. But
I couldn't
Brian,
help but ask you that question, John.
are you going?
No.
No. Thanks a lot, BP.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Take care. All right, Mr. Brian Pitt there. And you know, since we're winding up on a little bit of laughter here, I think this is a good opportunity for me to throw this in. I don't know if Brian's going to be able to see this, but I got to throw this in. We have somebody on this forum who joins us every morning. He's there right now. He wasn't for the past couple of days, but he's here right now. His name is TF Richards. All right. TF always comes on in the morning by saying, "Good morning, family." That's how he introduces himself. Well, a couple of days ago, somebody sent me an image, and I showed that on the program yesterday morning of TF, well, somebody saying, morning, family. And I want to share it with you folks right now. Take a look at this. So, TF, is that you, TF? And did you send that to me? I don't think it was TF who did. But take a look at that. Morning, family. Oh, TF. We made fun of you yesterday morning, all in good jest. Thanks a lot, bro. Thanks a lot. All right, pilgrims. One more little break here, and then we will get into yesterday's edition of the GIS. We can't leave that out.
My name is Jennifer James, and I've been making confectionaries for the past 7 years. Growing up as a little girl, I always wanted to make these little things. Fudge, sugar cake, tamarind ball, these little things. I read something actually, and it said that tamarind itself is very good because it eliminates fat from the liver. You get the mature tamarind and you crack it, you shell it out. I would add a little baking soda, some spices. I would leave it to rest probably for about 2 hours and then add my sugar and just start kneading. I usually knead it hard enough so that I can roll it. When I finish roll it, I will paste it with the actual white or brown sugar. And you have a nice tamarind ball. I have been providing food fair with tamarind ball about 6 years now. I started producing tamarind ball to sell for the school children. I thought I could advance somewhere. So I went to food fair and I asked one of the salespersons there if they would be interested in selling my tamarind ball. And she told me yes. She told me to bring 20 packets to start with. It was really a joy for me because I wanted to extend on my little business. My name is Jennifer James and I work with the food fair to provide you with tamarind balls.
Together with you, our customers, we energize our community.
Together with you, we energize our economy.
We are working together to give our nation a better tomorrow.
With you, we energize our future. Together, we energize our nation.
Thank you for partnering with us
as we energize our Spice Isle.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Alrighty, folks, just before we go, TF has cleared it up for us. That was not him. One, he didn't send it to us. I'm assuming that's what he's saying here. And two, that is definitely not a picture of TF. Pilgrims, how about today's edition or yesterday's edition of the National Report.
International Monetary Fund recommends enhanced monitoring of non-bank financial institutions. We'll have details to this story and more in the National Report. With the details to the news for Thursday, May 9th, I am Rakisha St. Louis. The International Monetary Fund says plans to move to a regional regulator of non-banks is a positive step that can lead to enhanced monitoring of non-bank financial institutions like credit unions. Adequate supervision of credit unions was one of the subjects addressed by IMF Mission Chief Bogdan Lesovolik during a press conference on Wednesday following the IMF Article 4 consultations. The consultations are part of the usual surveillance done with member countries to assess each country's economic health and forecast future financial problems. The IMF Mission Chief says there is need to ensure that standards in credit unions are sufficiently tight. At a regional meeting of credit unions this week, it was noted that in some countries the legal and supervisory framework for credit unions is outdated and there are no regular reporting requirements apart from the submission of audited year-end financial statements. This makes it difficult to monitor and assess the operations and soundness of individual credit unions. It was also noted that in other countries, not enough information is obtained to support the financial stability and mandate of the central bank. Credit unions are the most visible, important part of the non-banking financial sector that warrants enhanced monitoring. Lesovolik advised that the local regulatory body GAFIN must continue to monitor credit unions, strengthen capacity building and analysis.
Compared to the banks, credit unions do not provide enough information. They do not have as much information, and the frequency of information is less available. For the credit unions, the local regulator GAFIN, in order to have more information and more cloud, it needs to continue to strengthen capacity in terms of ability to do stress testing analysis and other analysis of all non-banks.
Government is working towards a September deadline to complete retrofitting of the CLICO building to temporarily house its court system. That's according to Government Senator Dr. Winston Garwe. He says September marks the start of the 2019 law year, so it is crucial that the building is ready to accommodate the special sittings that will be held around that time. Only recently, Legal Affairs Minister Honorable Kendra Mathurin Stewart announced that government has secured the second floor of the CLICO building on Yonge Street, St. George to house 2 civil courts. Senator Garwe said work will soon commence on the third floor, which will house 2 criminal courts.
And today I'm pleased to inform this Honorable House that to date we have access to the second floor of the building, and work has commenced in terms of retrofitting that second floor to accommodate 2 civil courts and as well as the auxiliary staff of the court. We are awaiting the keys to the third floor where we will do work to accommodate 2 of the criminal courts and of course facilities, docking and the likes and so forth. As we've said before, it is our hope to finalize all the works prior to the commencement of the 2019-2020 law year, which is in September.
This is the National Report. We'll have more news after the break.
Public Utilities Regulatory Commission announces its logo competition. Rules and regulations. The logo must include the words Public Utilities Regulatory Commission and PURC. The logo should be versatile enough to be used on PURC's website, brochures, booklets, stationery and press releases, etc. No copyrighted or trademarked images should be included in submissions. The logo must be clear and distinctly identifiable for effective application. The PURC shall reserve the rights and register the winning logo as its copyright. Entrants in the competition should provide their names, email addresses, and telephone number. Submission should be in 1 A4 size paper and soft copy in portable document format PDF and addressed to the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, PO Box 2443, Queen's Park, St. George. Eligible amateurs and students, no professional design agencies or their employees may submit entries. All entries will be judged on the following criteria: relevance of artwork, clarity of design and conveying theme, creativity and concept, visual appeal. Interested persons may obtain further information by emailing the office at cwinsboro@purc.gd or by calling the office at 437-1602. Deadline for submission, May 10th, 2019. There is a cash prize to be won.
Welcome back. 11 hurricane shelters are now more equipped following facility upgrades under the Canada Caribbean Disaster Risk Management Fund project. Under the project, done through the National Disaster Management Agency, NADMA, emergency shelters were upgraded to facilitate the physically challenged. Addressing a meeting of the Upper House on Thursday, Minister with responsibility for disaster management, Senator Dr. Winston Galway, said the $200,000 funded project concluded last week. Among the facilities are Dover Government School and St. John's Christian Secondary School.
Some 11 shelters were upgraded, as well as the installation of water storage facilities. As you know, emergency shelters are very useful in times of hurricanes and the likes. I do trust that this season we will not have to activate any of our emergency shelters because we trust that no storms will come our way. But should that happen, I want to say that we are happy with the Canada Disaster Risk Management Fund for the donation that they have given to us, some 200,000 EC dollars, to upgrade the shelters. We are looking forward to the second week in July for the handover of the shelters.
He says NADMA is also working towards having every hurricane shelter on island inspected before the start of the hurricane season on June 1st.
The team of engineers and fire inspection people and the likes would have done the work. They are now compiling the report to provide the cabinet, and provide me, which will take it to the cabinet with the final list of shelters. And we are looking forward to having that before the commencement of this hurricane season, which starts from June 1.
There are 13 named storms for what has been dubbed a near-average 2019 season. And finally, more than 35 schools participated in the preliminary round of competition of the annual NADMA Primary School Quiz on Thursday. Coming from 14 zones, the students tested their knowledge on the different types of hazards. GIS attended one of the preliminaries held at the Blessed Sacrament RC School on Thursday. Public Relations Officer of NADMA, Oslin Crosby, reports.
What is the time frame for a hurricane's name to be repeated? What is the time frame for a hurricane's name to be repeated?
6 years.
That is correct. Scientists believe that the sea is getting higher due to ships in the water. Scientists believe that the sea is getting higher due to ships in the water, making it higher.
False.
That is correct.
Woburn Methodist emerged one of the many winners, advancing to the semi-final round of the annual NADMA Primary School Quiz, which commenced today Thursday at centres across the island. Amassing a total of 365 points against the Blessed Sacrament's 180, the three-man Grade 5 team showed their dominance in the field, quizzed on 9 different hazards which surround us daily. The quiz, now in its 21st year, can boast of reaching over 2,000 students over time. The winning team from Methodist spoke of their success.
I hope for friendly competition and to learn more things, new things, and just all in all to have a good time.
Yes, I have learned a lot. I didn't know that
to do even better and hopefully get into
With the objective to increase awareness of comprehensive disaster management within the primary schools and to sensitize students and teachers on measures to reduce disaster risk, Principal of the Blessed Sacrament RC School, Hendra Simeon, concurred that she believes the objective is being met.
I think the quiz is a great idea that the NADMA has taken on. And of course, situations like these, it allows for the students, of course, to explore different aspects, different areas, not only just on academics in school, but other areas that relate to their everyday life. As a country, of course, we experience disasters yearly, and it offers them the opportunity to do extra research, extra study. Although, yes, my school would not have made it onto the next round, we are going to try to do better for next year. And I think that preparation, just as we prepare for disasters, is the same way we need to prepare for our quiz.
The quiz will run from the 9th of May and the final will be held on Thursday, 6th June 2019. Reporting, I'm Oslin Crosby.
Thank you, Oslin. That story just ended the national report for today, Thursday, May 9th. Let's recap the top story. International Monetary Fund recommends enhanced monitoring of non-bank financial institutions. On behalf of everyone here at the Government Information Service who made this newscast possible, I am Rakisha St. Louis saying thank you for joining us. Until next time.
Folks, just about time for Georgie Porgy to hightail it out of here on a Friday morning and get started with my weekend. Before we do, let's make one final visit to social media. John was listening to that piece with the IMF where they were talking about monitoring credit unions. And he says here, monitoring sounds like control. Benedict Cador says that is why they are credit unions and not banks. There is a difference, and different monitoring is expected and allowed. Margaret Francis also had her eyes on something in that newscast. She's talking here, she says, what is an A4 sized paper? And then she asked the question, are there any printers in the house? You know, printers would know what A4 is. And John responds by saying, standard paper size is 8.27 by 11.69 inches. 8 by 11, that's normal standard size of paper sheets. And Margaret says, I was being facetious. But seriously, guys, in the normal conversation, does anyone say A4 or letter-sized? At the end of the day, it is about communication and ensuring that your audience understands. Yeah, Mags? Yeah. Another thing, that's another one of those things we have to work on. Making sure that we are communicators and making sure that people understand what it is that we are trying to say. Yvonne Joseph is wishing everybody a blessed weekend. My dear friends, listen, We're going to wrap it up this morning with an inspirational, which is especially poignant after yesterday's challenges and this morning too. It comes to you from the book of Psalms, just 2 verses. Psalm 71, verses 20 and 21. It's as if the Lord was speaking. You know, people go, yeah, 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 when you say the Lord has spoken to you. Well, listen to this. And remember what happened yesterday and again this morning. Though you have made me see troubles, many and bitter, you will restore my life again. From the depths of the sea, you will bring me up. You will increase my honor and comfort me once more. What a hope we have. Yes, sir. I continue living in hope. Pilgrims, Georgie Porgy is going to leave, inviting you to join me on Sunday morning for the next edition of Sundays with George Grant. And then also join us again next week for our daily Gudday Grenada editions. God bless you.